everyone, welcome back. Happy Tuesday. I'm very excited for this week's video because for forever, Spirit was like giving me only really boring stuff to talk about. And I was getting really, really sick of it. And it was like shadow work and self-growth and hang on and you can do it. Like, I know we can do it. I want to do something fun though, right? So finally, we get to do something fun. Because last week's videos about our fuller selves, it was fun. It was more fun than the constant shadow work stuff, which shadow work is important. Don't get me wrong, but it shouldn't be all we're doing all of the time, right? And so that is another reason I'm so excited for this video, because last week, even though it was more fun with learning about our fullers and kind of how the energy structure has changed and what's going on, it's still more educational, right? This one's chaos. This one's just fun. This one is all about some of the unique beings that I have come across in my spiritual journey with my psychic abilities and some of what these beings were like, or specifically what the one I was speaking with was like. And little tips and tricks on if you wanted to try to connect with some of them, not all of them, if you wanted to try to connect with some of them, how you might go about it. Originally, I was going to try to do this all in one video, but I have actually already been recording for almost 20 minutes now. I'm coming back and editing this after the fact. I've been recording for almost 20 minutes now, and I've only covered 4 types of beings, and I've covered them so quickly. So change of plans. We're going to make this a 2-part video. I am going to go over about half of them now, and then I will save half of them and post it next week because I don't want to have to keep rushing so much. And they being Spirit have a lot to say. So this will be part 1 and I will post part 2 next week. So let's start by getting everybody on the same page. When I say beings, I mean like mythical creature type of beings, right? I mean, we're talking some either really, really big spirits or souls, or beings from literally mythology, or beings of the earth, some beings that I've never heard of before until they were like, hey, I'm here, and what it was like. Also, I'm going to say I talked to them. That's how I'm going to kind of just talk about the video. Like, oh, I talked to this being said this, but it might not have been words. It was through psychic abilities, okay? So it could have been a sense of knowing. It could have been kind of visions. It could have been emotions. Those are my top ones, right? But when I say talk, and I think this is true for a lot of like just spiritual people talking to each other, we use the human words that make the most sense to our human brain. But it doesn't mean that I was actually saying words to them. So you use your psychic abilities the way that they work for you, okay? Don't try to match me. Don't try to do exactly like I do. Take the information that I'm giving you and apply it to your own abilities, apply it to your own journey, because we are all individual. We all have our own abilities that are unique to us, that are like just extra powerful for us because we've spent a long time honing in those skills, or we're born from a certain type of energy. So apply it to your life, be your own spiritual journey, apply it to your own psychic abilities, and really go from there, okay? Some of these I've talked about before, but we're going to go through them all again. And I'm going to go really quickly because I'm going to try to make this video on the shorter side. But we're going to try to go over them all again so that there's kind of like a general area with this information that you can come back to and refer back to if and when some of these crazy magical beings pop up in your own life. For the sake of our human brains, I've kind of grouped these into similar categories. So I'm going to first talk about the ones that I feel like I talk about a little bit more often. So kind of the more common ones for us, for you and me in the community. And then I'll get into some of the more entertaining ones, the more unique ones, the ones where it probably got really, really weird. And I'm not saying the common ones, it doesn't get weird, because it does. But when there's a new level of weird from my daily weird, I take notice. We're going to start off strong. We're going to start with the Fae. Now, when I say the Fae, I say it as like an umbrella category, meaning there are a lot of types of Fae, and it's kind of just like an umbrella term I use to describe a lot of these beings, because I am not a Fae energy person. So connecting with Fae in the first place is a little bit trickier for me because I just don't naturally vibrate on a lot of the levels that the Fae vibrate on. So I have some Fae people that I typically refer to like, hey, can you help me out with this Fae thing? I can get my vibration there. Sometimes the Fae do change their vibration to match me, but it's just not like my typical baseline. So I'm not a Fae expert. And of course, all of this information could always change. So please double check and verify what I'm telling you and what you think you already know. But I would love to share with you some of my experiences with the Fae. When I first started my own spiritual journey, there were a lot of things that I did not believe in until I was, smacked in the face with it. And the Fae were one of them. So let me tell you how I came to believe in the Fae. And I tell this story every chance I get because to this day, it still kind of blows my mind, right? Because the Fae were like, I got your number. So my son is 1 year old, right? Like he's literally a baby. Everybody wants to meet him. We go visit family. And one of my aunts is like, hey, let's go build fairy gardens. And I was like, that's adorable. I would love to go build a fairy garden. So we all go, we built a fairy garden. I brought it home. Okay. My son isn't really like big enough to mess with it at this point when I bring it home. Okay. But as he grows and as time goes on a little bit more, he gets big enough to start messing with the fairy garden. And a little bit after I realized he was messing with it, I didn't think anything of it, right? I was just like, oh, don't touch that. Leave it alone. You're going to make a mess, right? My mistake. My mistake. Okay. I own that. Okay. Because very shortly after he started to mess with it, my things started to go missing. And I don't know if you can believe it, but I actually didn't used to be a person that lost things. I used to be very meticulous, very type A. Okay. The chaos has set in strong. I know, but I used to be very, very type A. And I did not lose things. And still, I have places for everything. And it's still a little bit strange for me to lose things repeatedly without other explanations. Okay. Because I put things where they go because I have systems. It's a whole thing with me. Okay. But my shit started to go missing. And in like a lot of ways, not like, oh, I misplaced this one thing and that thing over there was gone. No, things that I know where I put them. And I remember distinctly putting them these places, they go fucking missing. Okay. Over the course of a couple months, I am just losing things and they are not turning up. Nobody is finding them. They are gone. They're gone. Okay. So I started asking around in my little spiritual community, right? I was in a couple of Facebook groups. I made a couple of friends online and I was like, hey, I need some help because this is a thing and I don't know what happened. And so I'm talking to a couple of people and we come to the conclusion that maybe I should try to like fix the fairy garden. Maybe I should try to give the fae some offerings just to see if it helps, because if it is them, I fucked up. Okay. And so I was like, ooh, I really fucked up because I invited the fae into my home and then I ignored them. And then my son messed with the single space that they had. And I was like, ooh, that is my bad. Okay, that's my bad. So I fixed it. I fixed the garden. I moved it so my son couldn't get it anymore. I gave some offerings. It was like whipped cream and berries and coins and sparkly things, right? And I gave it a few days. And within 1 week of me doing the whole show, with me making the whole effort and fixing everything for the Fae, within 1 week, all of my shit was back. All of it. And if I remember correctly, it came back both in exactly where I thought it was and also in piles together, just like it was sitting on the counter in a pile, or it was like literally in the front of the drawer where I put it the first time, where I had literally left it and it disappeared, right? And so it was very obviously all of my things were coming back, but they also came back very quickly. They all came back within a week. And that's when I was like, okay, Faye, you got it. You win. My mistake. We live here together now. So that was my bad, okay? And I was like, my bad, Faye. We both live here now. We're doing great. I understand. We are operating within the same, the same location. I got it. You're here. I'm here. We're friends now, okay? And so up until the point that I moved from that house, I had a couple different types of Fae come in. I had the first type that was likes all of the cream and the berries. And then as I researched the Fae, I found some brownies that were coming in as well. And I have a hard time connecting with the Fae that's like the sweet cream and the berries, but the brownies are a little bit lower vibration. So I was able to communicate with them a bit more. And the brownies are, finicky, like the Fae are known to be, but they can also be very, very helpful. And as a new mom, I could use all of the help within my house that I can get. And so I did have a really good learning and working relationship with a couple different types of Fae until I had moved house. And I don't think the Fae came with me to my new house. I think that there was already an establishment of energy, an establishment of spiritual beings that were there. And I think it was already kind of like locked down with who was living where. So I don't think the Fae followed me. I think they knew I was moving on to the next thing. But it was it's a great story. It's very fun, but it was a very good interaction that I had with the Fae. And I'm very grateful that my first smacked me in the face interaction with the Fae was kind and was forgiving, because I know that they can be very finicky within their own right. They have their own set of rules. They have their own set of laws. There's many different types of Fae. People get them confused all of the time. So I understand, and I'm very grateful that they were very understanding of me. And now my son just turned 9. So that was a few years ago. And within all of my, spiritual exploration and my expanding consciousness and really just being smacked in the face with some of these beings, I have interacted with other types of Fae. There are a lot of demons, quote unquote demons, that are actually simply, I call them dark Fae, right? They're Fae of a lower vibrating type of existence, right? They're not the berries and cream Fae. They're not even like the brownie Fae, but they operate in that bottom energy. And I had interactions with a number of really kind of lovely bottom Fae. And they were like, I help with this. I help humans explore this energy. I help humans release their sexuality. And they helped in a lot of ways. And so when I talk about demons, again, demons being an umbrella term, I don't think that demons automatically equal bad. I think a lot of demons help us. And I think a lot of this dark fae kind of get crisscrossed over with the term demon. And I think that both fae, dark and light, and demons help us in very unique ways because their energy, their experiences, they're just very, very uniquely set up for helping in these situations, right? Some of the dark fae that I talked to were so liberating, and especially for very specific like women's sexuality, and there was even very specifics like men's chivalry, and being liberating in a way that is not like, oh, get back in your woman role, get back in your man role, but finding the joy and the power in those roles instead of being forced, finding that actual power that you get from being chivalrous, from being a sexual woman, the energy and the power that you get from offering this type of energy, not just for yourself, but out into the world, is so unique. And I'm, again, very, very grateful for the fae that I have come across, as well as the demons that I've come across that have helped me to see this bottom energy and to see these things in a very different light. And since we were talking about demons, my first interaction with like an actual quote unquote demon, or a being that identified themselves to me as a demon, because again, that's how my human brain understood it at a time. So even if they're not an actual demon, if my human brain understands the concept of this is where they live, I associate that with demons, they have this energy, I associate that with demons. If my brain understands the concept of who they are best with the label of a demon, sometimes they will just give me that label because first and foremost, this demon was just passing by. This demon was just floating on through and noticed me meditating up in the astral, noticed me struggling with this trauma, and came and was like, boop, and like removed the pin plug. I don't even know. He was like, here you go, and helps me process all of that off. So my first interaction with a being that identified themselves to me as a demon was to help me process off trauma, which was insane. It made my brain melt in many different ways. And again, I'm very, very grateful for it. And then, of course, on the flip side of demons, we have angels, because if there's a bottom energy, there has to be some sort of balance, some sort of counteracting top energy that keeps things from going topsy-turvy, right? And so we often associate angels and demons as being that counterbalance energy, just within the media, within Abrahamic religions, within just kind of the culture that most of us live in, right? So we're kind of familiar with angels and demons being top and bottom and balancing each other out. But in my experience, where I was within my life, within my journey, within the chaos within me, when I got to the point of really connecting and experiencing angels, it got really, really tricky for me because there's, again, angels is like an umbrella term, and it's a wide variety of things. Okay. And so I found for me personally, the two main types of angels that I have personally interacted with have been archangels, and then just like more so typical general angels, okay? Because you have, again, umbrella term. There's a lot going on. So the archangels, I have personally noticed, and this may just be them adjusting so that I can be more friendly to them. We'll put it that way, because y'all know how I feel about angels. The archangels have seemed to be, to me, a little bit more balanced, a little bit more understanding of that bottom energy, of there are other paths, other avenues, other things at play, where your common, quote unquote, typical angels that can come and help and give a lot of angel numbers and guide and do things that way, they have been more my way or the highway, do it now, do it the way I say, nothing else matters except for what I'm talking about. And that sends me into panic attacks. That doesn't fly well with me. That triggers a lot of things from my past, and I don't like that energy. With this being a very broad and general video, with there being so many types of fae, so many types of demons, so many types of angels, I'm not going to really give advice on how to connect with them. Instead, I would say if you are being called to them, to follow that energy if you want to, right? Because we have so many different types of these beings that maybe one type is for us and another type is not. So instead of searching this out, if you stumble across it, if you find it, if you're called to it, you can connect as it comes up. So you can go to the woods. The fae love the woods, right? You can go to the woods and you can sit and you can meditate. Maybe a fae will come say hi. There are so many types, and with each type, there's so many rules. And so I am not a resident expert in fae, demons, or angels. I don't know the rules. I used to know more of the rules. I think a lot of them have changed. So instead of being like, this is how you do it, instead, I recommend you finding what you want, finding what's being called to you, sitting in that energy, and taking it really, really slow. making sure you have a solid foundation, making sure you have good connections with your guides so they can literally guide you through this type of thing. That's part of their job, is to teach you how to interact with other spiritual beings, believe it or not. So make sure you have a good connection with your guides. Even if you can't hear them, know that you have that connection. So know that you trust your intuition, know that you trust your heart and your soul and your bones, and just go really, really slow. Let the other being ask a lot of questions, let them talk about themselves, let them offer information to you. Really just try to absorb whatever they're telling you, because that's going to give you the most information about not just who they are, not just what they're doing there, but the rules and how they operate and how to be respectful and all of those types of things. So it's not really a beginner's like jump into it without a foundation. So again, if it's called to you, if it's coming up, explore it carefully and cautiously that way. Next, let's talk about the gods. I spent, it feels like an entire year talking to only gods, because I had made all of these decisions. I had said what I wanted to do. I said I wanted to start a temple. I'd said I wanted to help pagans, right? And so all of the gods were like, I got you, babe. I got you. And they showed up in really, really big ways. And I feel like I spent an entire year talking to only gods, and it was a wild ride. Through that experience, over that course of all of these gods coming and being like, I'm here, babe, what's up? I was able to learn to connect with gods from many, many different pantheons, many different types of gods, even gods that had been forgotten, gods that still exist, and they probably don't have very much power. Typically, they didn't have very much power because nobody even remembers their name, but they still were in existence. And most of them were just floating and chilling and, hanging out, because there's rules and there's things at play, right? And you don't have to stay a god if that energy vortex isn't there, per what I knew years ago. Okay, this could have changed, but they were kind of just hanging out. They still liked humanity. They were still a part of it. They still wanted to enjoy it. But the overall thing that I did learn is that the gods, have their own set of rules and regulations and codes that they live by that do not match the rest of the spiritual community that interacts with humans. So the gods are a bucket all their own. Okay, don't ever confuse them. But also that they are very different. They're very unique. Each and every one of them is unique within their role, their God job, within who they were before they became that God, within how they operate within that God role, how they combined who they are with managing that energy, with the expectations of them. And each God vibrated very differently. Some vibrate really high, some vibrate really low, some vibrate closer to humans. And so again, if you are wanting to connect with a God, please know what you're doing. Please have done your research first. Always, always, always start with research when it comes to gods, and take it slow and be really respectful. Ask a lot of questions. Make sure you have that foundation to build off of. But I will say the gods are so much fun. And even though I wanted to pull my eyeballs out of my ears, they were so much fun. I'm going to do 2 more for this video, and then we'll save the rest for next week. So next up we have aliens. And aliens, again, is something that I did not believe in until I kind of got slapped in the face with them. At this point in my spiritual journey, I'd already had the Fae experience, and I was like, you know what? Anything is possible, right? Like, I learned my lesson. Anything's possible, but I had never experienced aliens. Let's call it that, okay? So I had a little bit of kind of interactions with them before, where I had a couple like readings that I was doing where aliens were present, but I wasn't really sure if it was actually an alien or if my brain was just translating it as alien. Because again, it happens sometimes, right? Like, we're human, and our human brain does try to help translate. Sometimes it gets in the way, sometimes it keeps our brain from melting. So I wasn't really sure what was happening. I had a couple aliens pop up in readings saying like, hey, well, they're alien energy, or they had an alien life, or like aliens are a part of their human life, they're part of the guiding system, they're doing some like body work for some people, things like that. Okay, but again, I wasn't really sure if my brain was translating correctly, because aliens. And then I had started watching this show called Cosmic Disclosure on the Gaia channel, I guess, the Gaia app. And the guy Emery was talking about all of these different alien things, and I kept getting these like really just kind of bizarre download visions of like alien things happening based on what he was talking about. However, again, we question ourselves. Am I crazy? Where is this coming from? Am I making it up? And so I was keeping a mental note of the things that I was seeing, but it still hadn't really like hit home. It hadn't really, just convinced me yet. And I think somebody in spirit took that as a personal challenge, because shortly after or during all of this, I guess, because it was very multi-part, right? Like a little bit here, a little bit there. And then I started watching Cosmic Disclosure, and it got like boom, 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 boom. Every episode I was watching, it was getting really intense. Okay. And so somebody was like, what is wrong with this chick? Why isn't she getting it yet? She's still fighting it. And so they said, okay, here, have an experience. And boy, oh boy, was it an experience. It started out as a vision, where I wasn't just like seeing what was going on, but it was me experiencing being a part of this vision. Like I am in the vision, I am experiencing from that first person point of view what is happening in this situation. And so human Rebecca has been transported into an alien's body, okay? And you would think that alone would be enough, but the experience, man, let me tell you, I don't know how I ended up here, and I don't know who got this approved or what loopholes went around. But I popped my little human self into that alien body, and that alien body was laying on a kind of table, like an operating table, like a metal operating table. And there was all of these aliens around it. All of them looked the same, and I kind of instinctually knew that I was the same type of alien on this table. All of the aliens were kind of like fixing up my body, and I suspect conspiracy theories aren't entirely off when they say that the government, specifically the US, however, probably all governments, know about aliens and operate with aliens. And it's been announced at this point, right? Like aliens are real. The government's known about them forever. Conspiracy theories, I think, have a little bit of truth in them because, again, I was popped into this vision and I was on a military base of some type. I will leave the conspiracy theories to other people, okay? But I was popped into this group of aliens being an alien on some type of military base. And how do I know it was a military base if all I saw around me were aliens? I am so glad you asked, because when the aliens that were operating on me realized that there was more consciousness in the body than just the alien themselves, when they realized that I was also there, they got very, very, very afraid for me. They went stone cold straight face. Now I've popped into places I kind of shouldn't have been before, and typically when that happens, somebody cuts it off. And they kind of told me that when all of the like actors, it happens a lot in dreams, right? So when all the dream actors turn and look at you all of a sudden, and then you kind of get popped out of the dream, that's how they explained when you were somewhere you weren't supposed to be before and you were going to mess it up and they pop you out. Okay. That didn't happen this time. Instead, the aliens pretended like I wasn't there. And they telepathically communicated with me that I needed to leave right now. And I could feel the urgency of me needing to leave because it felt like it would have been unsafe, not just for me as a human, but for the alien and for all of the other aliens operating there. They gave me this feeling that somebody was watching, from the three-way, the two-way mirror, or whatever it was, the glass. And even now, like I'm almost feeling like I shouldn't be talking about it. Like they were very, very afraid for me. And they told me I needed to get out as quickly as possible. And they all pretended like I wasn't there in the first place. And that slapped me in the face. Like to this day, you can probably see like I'm like my body is like reacting to it. It's very bizarre. And I can pull up the fear almost immediately when I think back to that story that alien that was communicating with me had. They were very, very afraid because I was not supposed to be there. The final being that I want to talk about in this first part of the video is myself. I've experienced myself not just as like past versions and even future versions. I've experienced myself as inner child versions. I've experienced myself as other types of beings. And what is my working theory about how I got into that alien's body is that I have a soul connection. We share a higher orange, me and this alien, or maybe that alien is my higher orange or was my higher orange at the time. And so I think there was some type of shared connection there that allowed me to pop into that alien's body, even though I was not supposed to be there. Because shortly after that, I had some more visions of this like first person point of view. And knowing what I know now and putting it all together on how I've experienced my fuller selves and how I've experienced my higher selves and kind of the first person point of view that I have when I go to experience like being them, and kind of the way that they communicate with me and the way that I know things, and like knowing what I know now, looking back on it, it was very, very similar to the way that I communicate with other versions of myself. And it also explains how I got there when I was not supposed to be there. So I had, after that, a couple other very interesting first person visions. One of them, I was driving a spaceship and I literally blew up a planet. And that was it. I get no other information. That stays with me to this day. I have asked about it many times and they're like, no, that's not for you. And I was like, well, I didn't want it in the first place. Y'all did this. So I have experienced a couple other very, very bizarre interactions with aliens, not just from that first person point of view, but from, third kind of interacting point of views as well. And something that I've just come to understand is that death is very different depending on the type of being that you are. I've experienced myself dying as an alien. However, it was not the same type of almost permanent death that we have as humans, where if certain components of the body are still, I don't know, okay, viable, you're not dead anymore. Do I sound crazy? Absolutely. This is for sure when I started leaning into the crazy. This is for sure when I started questioning, like, what path am I going to take here? And I did make the decision right around this time of leaning into the crazy and not asking myself, am I crazy? Because at this point, I assumed I was. I asked myself, is my life being benefited from the crazy? And I really was enjoying my experiences. I really was enjoying communicating and connecting with different types of beings and expanding my consciousness that way. I didn't think I was hurting anybody. I wasn't like publicly speaking about them at the time. And I really sat with them and integrated them in a way that let me stay really grounded. And I think that's the most important part here, is to integrate in a way that keeps you human, that keeps you grounded. So I still continue to do a lot of work. I still ask myself if I'm crazy, and then I remember, oh no, you actually are crazy. And then I ask myself, is this crazy benefiting my life? And I really, really enjoy it. So here we are. So that is one like really big way that I kind of experienced myself as a different type of being. But as you guys know, if you've been following me for any amount of time, I have experienced myself as Fuller's, as past self, as inner child, and things like that. And I want to share a little bit about that because that got weird too. So there has been two different ways that I have experienced myself. So I experienced myself oftentimes through that first person point of view where I'm kind of living that life, right? But I do also experience talking to myself as like myself and them, two point of view, right? Like two person, where there's also the experience where you can see from that third person kind of two beings talking and you're looking down. So there's a lot of different ways that you can experience yourself. I would like to talk about some of the most common ways that I've seen each experience. The first time that I really realized that like this was me, this is my, fuller self, this is my higher self, it was that kind of two-person point of view where they had been talking to me as a spirit, as a being. They happened to be a goddess, and we had been having conversations. And it was down the line that it clicked that that was actually me. Once it clicked that it was actually me, we went through, I kind of just call it a merging process where like we become each other's energy, right? Like there's not that stark separation. We merge together, and there's still me here and there's still her here, but we're merged. And once that merge kind of happened, and I admit, I think there was a lot of misunderstanding and fear from human Rebecca's part that prevented that merge in the first place. Sometimes you just merge right away and you never get that two-person experience. But once we merged, a lot of that interaction became that first person point of view. And so if I wanted to speak with my fuller, if I wanted to speak with my higher, I would speak with them kind of in my brain, and they sound like me, but they're not me because we're having two different conversations. So that's kind of a little bit what it was like to be merged. Sometimes also you can go and experience like literally your higher's life, and you can kind of ask to, it's almost like you're stepping into their body and you can see through their eyes. You can maybe a little bit know what's going on. They kind of can control what you know, what you feel, things like that, or at least in my experience. Maybe that's just me. Maybe they're like, Rebecca, you get into too much nonsense. Here's your blinders. But they didn't open up everything for me, and I was experiencing what they were sharing with me. I was seeing through their eyes, but they could kick me out anytime I wanted. But the other thing that was really unique about that type of experience is when I would have questions, where I would have conversations with my fuller, with my higher, when we were merged and I was in that first person point of view, human Rebecca would have all these questions, and I would still understand my own brain and my own thoughts. And I was formulating these questions and I was asking them back and forth. And, it might take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to ask these questions and have this conversation with my fuller. But in my fuller's life, this conversation happened in a split second. And oftentimes they happen during really wild things. Like one happened during a battle. And I was like, what's going on? What's happening? And she gave me this whole backstory. And, for me, it was like 10 minutes, but for her, it was like a split second. I got this whole backstory, and she's fighting the battle again, and I'm just watching. And so time is a really weird thing. Time is a construct. It is different depending on where you are within the universe. And there are places that are outside time altogether. So time gets really, really weird when I experience myself. In exploring how weird time got, specifically with like experiencing myself, I experienced a whole bunch of different stuff. So in some past lives that I would go back and experience, and I specifically started looking at kind of how I was experiencing these past lives. It comes in a few different flavors. So typically when there is something traumatic, I am so grateful. They give me that third person point of view. They pull me out and they let me watch it happen. And I have seen myself die more times than I care to count. And I really appreciate when I get pulled out and I get that third person point of view, because then I don't have to experience all of the emotions and all of the intensity of those emotions that I experienced then. And so if they are able to pull me out, if it's not something I need to process, whatever is going on, if they're able to pull me out and give me that third person point of view, that is one time that not only am I super grateful for it, but that I have experienced that third person point of view the most. Because other times I kind of experience, like I said, these conversations with these beings, and I'll have these conversations kind of two person with myself. You can have these conversations with your inner child. I highly recommend it. It helps process and remove a whole bunch of inner child blocks. And also can help you as the adult self feel safer and feel calmer and kind of identify where these emotions are coming from, because your inner child is in your body and they're doing what they were supposed to do at that time, but sometimes they just get a little stuck and they need reassurance that you're an adult, you're in charge, you're in control. So I've had that third person point of view in past lives. I've had that two person point of view, that conversation point of view. It's probably not even called two person point of view. The grammar people that are better than me are going to be so annoyed with me in this video. I am so sorry. Okay, so that two person point of view, I have a lot with inner child. And another thing that is really interesting is that sometimes I do have those conversations with past life versions of myself. Now, when I have those conversations with past life versions of myself, this is where time gets really weird. This is like that past life is happening simultaneously to my current human life as well. Even if it was in the past, even if it was in like the 1600s, it's happening simultaneously. It's happening right now. And I am having a conversation with myself from the 1600s. And myself from the 1600s could be my actual individual orange slice, or it could be another orange slice from the whole orange. It could be any number of things, and it gets very, very timey-wimey brain melty very quickly, but it's a very amazing experience. But like I said, a lot of times I do experience myself from that first person point of view, which is a wild thing in itself. Now, just because you're experiencing a being through a first person point of view does not automatically mean that you are them and they are you, even though we all come from like source or wherever, right? It doesn't automatically mean that that's your higher. But there's a lot of benefits that come from giving an experience in that first person point of view. Mainly, like if I had to pick the top thing, it would be being able to get a whole bunch of information through emotions very, very quickly. Because when I experience myself through that first person point of view, I have access not just to kind of like general idea of what's going on, but they also give me the emotions. And the more that you look into emotions, the more you understand emotions, the more you find out how you experience emotions, how human you experiences them, the more information you can kind of pull and translate from them. So I can know if there's a betrayal, I can look into it and I can kind of get an idea of who betrayed me. If there was like a parental figure that betrayed me, or if it was a lover that betrayed me, like that's two very different emotions, even though it's within the betrayal emotion. And so in that split second that I feel these emotions, I can kind of go and look and pick apart what those emotions are telling me. I can get a general idea of the story of what's happening in a split second, where I just kind of exist and know. It's not a conversation where they have to tell me, like I was saying before, where it was kind of like 10 minutes for human me and a split second for them. We don't even have to do that, because when I am in that experience, they give me these emotions and I am able to pull them apart and pick them apart very quickly, because I've just been practicing with my own emotions. And the amount of information that you can get through emotions in such a short time it blows my mind every single time, because I could have conversations for 30 minutes with a spirit and they can give me 2 seconds of, a clip, 2 seconds of a point of view, 2 seconds of an experience. And I get so much more information that way than I do through these elongated, back and forth two-person conversations, because it's just all encompassing in so many ways. You can apply this to other spirit conversations as well. Even if you're not seeing through that first person point of view and you're trying to have a conversation with a different spirit, if that information is just like not coming across clear, if you're really having to work hard for it, see if that spirit understands emotion. See if that spirit can give you emotions to kind of help explain what's going on, because the amount of information within a single emotion is astonishing. Like, I know I keep saying that, but I cannot stress enough how powerful emotions actually are. Okay, I am going to stop here for this week because I've had a ton of long videos. I want to shorten them up. So next week I have like 12. Hopefully, I'll have even more on the list by next week. But I have like 12 different types of beings that I want to talk about. They include everything from like the bugs and the trees to the birds to Bigfoot and dragons to hive mind, concept being, reapers, fates, all of those types of things. So I'm gonna save that for next week. I'm gonna maybe add more to the list if they let me, because like I said, these are fun. If we can make it a part 3, you guys let me know if we want to try to make it a part 3. But for sure next week I'm going to get to these other ones. Let me know what you guys thought. Let me know what you guys thought about these general beings. What's wrong with me today? Let me know what you guys thought about these general beings in this video this week. Do you guys experience yourselves the same way? I think that one trips me out the most. And also share with me, because I would love to hear them, even if I don't comment back, I do read them, what experiences you have had with the Fae or with angels or with demons. Because like I said, I'm just one person. These are my experiences, and these are my experiences told in a very, very quick manner. I'm really flying through these. So please share your experiences so that everybody in the community gets not just my experience, but gets a wide variety of experiences and can really start to use that to build a foundation on what these beings can be like, how to find them, how they're calling for you, all of those types of things. But if you leave this video with no other information other than this, please be careful, be respectful. Don't jump in and just cause havoc. Don't do a me, okay? Don't do that. Be very, very slow and very gentle and very respectful, and trust your intuition, trust your team, trust your gut, trust your bones. You are powerful and you are magical and you are psychic, even if your abilities don't work the way you think they should. I promise you, you have something to offer as well. Little update, kind of about what to expect in the Patreon for the coming months, what's going on. I am doing a little bit of traveling. So I will have some pre-recorded videos for you while I'm gone. But please make sure to check out that video and leave me your question, comments, concerns. I'll see you guys next week.